Hey guys, so hope you're doing well. Going to talk about bibliographies for senior thesis today. And so I've received 2 bibliographies, 2 out of 4. So if you haven't gotten yours into me, please take the opportunity to do that. I'm trying to help you out with these and get those in. Now, moving forward, I would like for everyone to submit whatever draft you have, whether it's an outline or a completed draft. Whatever you have done, submit that to me tonight. So I think our original due date for these things is May 8th, which is Friday. Now, I would like at least to have a draft from everyone on Friday so we can say we got something done. And then I think it'll be a lot easier to work with Dr. Brake about polishing these things up in the following week. Makes sense? But I need drafts before I can help you. Okay, so bibliographies. And the first question is, why bother with a bibliography? No one likes doing them very much. They're tedious. You have to figure out what style you're using. We're using Chicago style, by the way. And you have to wonder, like, why do we need to nitpick about formatting the bibliography and putting it in exact order and everything? And the short answer is that books, research papers, articles, website, none of this stuff springs out of a vacuum, right? So your thesis topics, you might have some idea, some vague idea about what you want to argue, but your thoughts aren't your own on these topics. They're too big for you. You weren't born knowing how the Great Depression economy worked, right? So bibliographies are a way to show where you're drawing your knowledge from, right? And to show what other literature on the subject you've been interacting with. And you don't, it's probably invisible to you now because when you go read books and articles and stuff, you guys are young enough and inexperienced enough academically where you're not flipping to the bibliography right away to see what the author's engaged with. But trust me, if you keep going with academics, that becomes very important. And so just as a few examples, a couple books I've read recently. This one's called Ego and Soul by John Carroll. It's a sociological book. Okay, he's got a bibliography, right? And you can see his is very long. Okay, small print. I mean, it's pages and pages, and it's formatted. I don't know how it's formatted exactly, but he's got all the sources he used, and we're going to talk about different types of sources in a minute. Here's another one, The Mystery of Jesus Christ. This is for the dogmatic theology class I took this semester. Okay, it's a textbook, but same thing. At the end of the thing, you've got a bibliography, and you have all these sources given. And so notice that these book-length publications are using dozens and dozens and sometimes hundreds of sources, okay? Because that's, again, what it takes to say anything informed about a difficult topic. You have to see what's out there and see what's already been written on it. Now, you're just doing a little tiny piece of that for your thesis project, right? It's not comprehensive, but that's a good starting point for 12th grade students, is to engage a little bit of secondary scholarship, just a corner of what's been said on your topic. So then you figure out how to do that a little more competently. And so those were examples from books. I told you I've done a big paper recently for New Testament. Here's my bibliography, right? And so it's at the end of my paper. This was in Chicago style, so we're going to be looking at how this looks because this is basically how yours should look. But here's the end, page 15 to the end of my typing. Bibliography is on a new page, right? And I mean, we can talk about the way they're formatted in Chicago right here. So centered, 12-point font by Times New Roman's, usually pretty safe. No bold, no italics, no underline, nothing, just bibliography at the top of the page. And then the way it's usually done in Chicago for high school and undergrad and such is that the entries are alphabetical by author's last name, usually. I'm going to show you a few exceptions in a minute. And the entries themselves are single spaced. So you see these entries that are more than one line long on mine are single spaced, but then you skip a line between entries. Makes sense? So here, this first one by Alter, the next one by Antonello, there's a space in between them. And that's how you set this up. Again, all alphabetized. I don't need to tell you how to put things in alphabetical order, I'm sure. And when there's more than one line in the entries, which you'll see most of mine have more than one line, you're using what's called a hanging indent. Hanging indent. So the second line in any entry is going to be indented. And why would that make sense? Remember, all this formatting stuff is to make it easier to figure out where you're getting your information from. Okay, this is all practical. Because let's look what happens when it's not a hanging indent. Try this. If I can't mess with my format too much, I guess. But let's say it's not a hanging indent. Then you have this word Kindle underneath the author's name. It starts to get confusing. Does that make sense? So the hanging indent lets you show it, lets the author's name stand out right away. Okay, because the only things that are going to be not indented should be last names or other significant things like that. So they're easy to find. So again, if you're in the midst of the paper and there's a footnote and you see, oh, Girard, okay, where's that in the bibliography? Oh, he's read these 3 things by Girard. All right, that's the purpose of the hanging indent, is to make it easy to use. Now, I know whatever word processor you're using, it might be a little different. I know on Google Documents, which is what I did this paper on, what you have to do is you might have a first line, and then maybe you go down a line. This is not double space, that's fine. And when you just press enter, it's going to be hard to get your hanging indent in. You have to press it's enter and then tab on Google Docs. Again, that didn't look very nice because it's in double space, but you'll have to hit enter on that second line and then tab, and it should take care of your hanging indent for you. Okay, so that's that. Now, what you'll know, and we're going to look at the two that have been submitted to me in a minute here, just to talk a little bit about them. But what you'll notice is these are all different kinds of sources, and those of you who have done a little research, that's the same with your bibliographies. You're using different kinds of sources, which are going to be slightly formatted differently. Okay, we'll talk about that in a minute. But you can see I'm using different kinds of sources here. So Alter, Robert, Genesis. This is a book. Okay. Antonello, the novel Deviated Transcendency and Modernity. This is an article, a journal article. So you can see the formatting is a little bit different. In general, right, if you're just trying to draft it, like something like a book's going to go author, last name, first name, title in italics. So you'll notice with books and substantial works like books, like a biblical commentary, for example, or a collection of poetry or something, title is going to be in italics. And then we've got city of publication, New York, Norton and Company, publisher, and then year of publication. And that's stuff you can all find on the title page. And then, like, I have this book on Kindle, not in print. So I included Kindle and why? Because the page numbers are different. All right, here's a journal article. So same thing, author, last name, first name. Now, if you have an article in a journal or in a something like the New York Times, say, you're not going to use italics for the title. You're going to use quote marks. Okay, so the novel Deviated Transcendency and Modernity. That's the title of this article. The publication, because something like an academic journal is going to be published in some kind of serial publication. This one's called Religion and Literature. Okay, so that's in italics, the title of the whole journal. So this article is one article in a journal like that. Okay, and I can give you an example. Just give me half a second here. Okay, this doesn't work perfectly well because it's not strictly academic, but I'll show you. First Things, this is a publication, and it's not exactly an academic journal, but here's the issue. So this is April 2020, and within, you're going to find all these articles with different titles by different authors. So what's this first one? Professor as Propagandists, Alexander Riley. So that's kind of what's going on with academic articles, like the kind of thing you find on Jstor. They're published in serial publication. So this is this article by this author in Religion and Literature 43. This usually refers to like volume, something like that. Number 3, 2011. So here's the date, and then pages within the publication. Okay. And I've showed you guys all, I think. If you're doing something on Jstor, let me come up with an example here, because I think you have my Jstor login. On Jstor, if you're finding a journal article there, you can usually cite it with a really easy button on the website. Okay, and I'll show you what I mean. If I can log in, pardon me, I should have thought of doing this. Doing this beforehand. That's okay though. Okay, so here's a search in Jstor. If you're looking at this, if you're using this forum, this database, whatever article you're on, you can click cite this item. Okay, and then it'll give you, I mean, it's really easy. MLA, APA, Chicago. Now, you got to be careful though, because let's look what happens if you just copy and paste a citation like this right into your document. So I'm going to go to the bottom of mine. I think this is an article I did indeed use. But okay, I copied that from Jstor. Now this is where you can't be a robot. That's not formatted correctly, right? So if you just blasted that in your bibliography, not going to be okay. And first thing is that you want it single spaced. Okay, and then you, like I'm using Times New Roman in the rest of my thing, 12. Going to want to change the font and font size. And I don't know if you can see, but that's a different color than the rest of my entries. So I'm going to go ahead and make the text color black. You know, because those are things you notice. Like I noticed that on your papers, if something's a different font or a different size or a different color, you want to be not lazy and sharpen those things up. Okay, so here it's starting to look better, but it needs to be hanging indent. So I'm going to hit enter, tab, enter. That'll fix it. Enter. You got to play around with the formatting a bit, but there, now it's in hanging indent. And I'm not going to make you watch me type this out here, but that forum on Jstor has all caps as the title. Well, that's not, I mean, it'd be okay if you were doing all your article titles in all caps, but I'm not. So I would go ahead and retype that with normal capitalization. Okay, so see how that's working? You can get the basic format of something like an article right from Jstor or right from whatever database you're using, but then you might have to go sharpen it up on your own. Okay, so that's an article, right? And I've got a couple of those. Here's a different kind. So Aristotle, Nicomachean Ethics. That's a book, but it's an ancient book, like a public domain ancient book. There's a lot of different versions of the Nicomachean Ethics. Translated by Joe Sachs, City, Newburyport, Focus Publishing, 2002, print. That tells us exactly which version of this text I'm using, okay? Here's another article. Here's another ancient source from online. Okay, Athanasius, Incarnation of the Word, Grand Rapids, Christian Classics Ethereal Library. That's the website it comes from. And here is, what do you call it? The website address, whatever it is. Okay, Dostoevsky, Notes from Underground, translated by these people, Toronto, Vintage Classics, 93, print. Okay, and this brings up a good thing. So here we have Dostoevsky, and then if you have two sources by the same author, or more than two sources by the same author, it's okay to, instead of repeating the name Dostoevsky, you can start the next entry with a triple M dash, okay? And so M dash is this thing, right? Sometimes it's just two dashes. The universal shortcut for it is Alt 0151, and then it'll put one in. Okay, so you do 3 of those guys, and then a period. And that says, oh, the same author is what's right above it. That makes sense? Just so you don't have Dostoevsky written more than once in the bibliography. And again, that's pretty regular practice. Let me show you from an example from here from John Carroll. Let's see. So rootledge, I don't know if you can read that, but same thing. Dashes for repeat author names, or triple M dash. Okay, and then I have another one of those here with Gerard René. Okay, so you see two of these triple M dashes underneath. That means these next two entries are both by René Girard. Okay, and when you have more than one work by the same author, you put the titles in alphabetical order. So D, I, V. That's just alphabetized by title. Okay. Just looking through the rest of these. So here's another journal entry. You notice that they're all, what you want is consistency. So all the books should be formatted like books, and articles formatted like articles, and websites formatted the same. And if you can't figure out exactly how to format something, you just get as close as you can and try to make it match the rest of your bibliography. It's like, sometimes it's not going to be perfect, but what you don't want is to have it so wonky looking that it stands out, okay? I mean, do you really think that Dr. Brake wants to comb through every period in your bibliography? No, and I don't either. But if it looks sloppy right off the bat, then you're going to invite a closer look for the wrong reason. But I know if you were to just glance at this one I've put together, it looks on the surface like it's pretty much fine. So even if there are errors, and I'm sure there are, they don't stand out, right? And oh, another thing on articles or any kind of online source or anything you retrieve from the internet, it's nice to put a date of access. So access 27th of April, 2020. And it's a little late for this now, but a tip on doing research in general, just keep a running bibliography. So I did all this research. I have like 39 sources here, which was a lot. Not that I read all of them, but referenced and read a good amount of all these. I read all this over about a month, and I had this document going the whole time. So I was just adding things as I looked at them. So whenever I found this article by Goodhart, April 27th, I read it, or read as much as I wanted, then put it in my bibliography with this access date. So that way you're just covering your tracks as you go, and you don't have to go back at the end and fix everything all at once like you guys have to do here. Okay, different sources. Good. Okay, so here's a couple strange ones. So the Greek New Testament, the Bible's a weird thing to cite. You won't have to be doing that for your papers, but notice I started not with an author name because there's not one author for the Bible. I started with the title of whatever I was using. So this was a Greek New Testament, and then you give editors, right? And which version and all that. Okay, but that's enough enough of mine. Again, I'm going to post my paper because it's in Chicago. It's the same kind of thing you're doing, a little longer, but that's fine. It's the same style of paper, a research paper in Chicago. So I'll post that so you can look at the bibliographies. Now, we're just going to glance real quick at the bibliographies I had turned into me. So let's look at this one first. Now, bibliography, that's fine. Okay, but it's going to want to be, we're going to want to have the thing overall single spaced. Okay, what I'm going to do is if you turn one of these into me, look for it tomorrow morning. I will make comments and or provide format for you and send them back. Does that make sense? So look for that tomorrow. But like these should be single space here and then a double space between entries. That makes sense? So entries themselves, single spaced, double spaced between, and we'll want hanging indent and all that. It looks like it's in alphabetical, so that's good. Yeah, and we'll have to go through and figure out what these are. So if this is, say, an article in a journal or a magazine or something, we want to put the title in quotation marks and all that. Again, I'll take a closer look tonight. Good number of sources. So whoever's this is has done pretty thorough research, and that's great. Okay, let's take a look at the other one I got here. Okay, so bibliography. These on the surface look like that looks correct. That looks good. Author's name, title, and quotes. This tells me this is some kind of article or journal article. Foundation for Econ Education. Right, little things here. I would put a period and then say accessed 29th of May. Again, what I'll do is underneath or at the top or whatever kind of source it is, I'll do my best to give you a generic format, or maybe I'll fix one of them and highlight it and say, okay, this is an article. This is how all your article sources should look. This is a book. Here's how all the books should look. Something like that. Okay, not bad, not bad, not bad. All right, so, and this is what I mean. So I know this is an unfinished bibliography. I'm picking on it a little bit unfairly, but here would be something where it's like all of a sudden, whoa, we're out of format. I don't know what this is. It doesn't match everything else. That's what you want to avoid. So that's what we're just trying to do, is button up these bibliographies at the last second here so that they're passable, if that makes sense. And again, I've only got 2 of them, so if any of you actually watch to the end of these things, bug your classmates and have them send those things in. I'm giving free help on it because we want you to write a good senior thesis and go out on a nice note that way, okay? And you should want to do a good job too. You shouldn't want to be lazy and blow it off just because you're seniors and it's a weird time, right? Do a good job with it. You're putting your name on it, and let's just try to make them as sharp as they can be. So send me drafts now too, because we'll look at your prose style, formatting, all that, argumentation, and then the use of sources within your paper. So if you look at mine, one of the things you'll notice is there's a ton of footnotes. It's like a 15-page paper, and there's like 60 footnote references, more than 2 or 3 a page. And that's where anytime there's a hint of an idea you got from something else you read, you want to footnote it if you can, right? Avoid plagiarism at all costs. And that's just a matter of saying, here's what I was reading when I thought of this, or this thought comes directly from this source. And so we'll talk about how to format your footnotes tomorrow, okay? But for now, get me drafts, right? Let's make sure these things are good. Okay, see ya.